For the majority of my free time, I am preoccupied with ideas. And that is why this subject is so interesting to me. I'm so passionate about this and I wanted to dive deeper. So let's dive deeper. When it comes to art and the ideas, who has more profound insight into the essence of creating and creation itself, and therefore knowledge about it? The one with the bare experience of the exact process, and through that process, inevitably individual experience of it, or the one who has knowledge as a universal principle, which is more comprehensive? There might be a possibility of pursuing the first principle of a creation inside of a craft. Man did not invent a fire, man discovered it through a manual craft. For example, Michelangelo said that he saw an angel in a marble and carved until he set him free. So did he put the idea of an angel in a marble? Or an angel has already been there as one of the eternal possibilities of forms from a single matter galvanized by a creative way of thinking? We can all have ideas, but a manual craft is what sets an angel free. But applied work deals with temporary, though, not the eternal, except if we grant that a singular entity inherits the eternal. So without wisdom, such that access to a higher level of consciousness, there is no angel in a marble to be seen anyways, right? So codependence of those two is the answer, or is it disputable? And can one arise from the other? According to Aristotle, there is no such idea that exists in a form that is a blueprint of a substance, but rather as an abstract, for example, a number. But if number as a first principle has no substance or a body, how is it possible for beings to exist? If a body is another degree of the substance and they are divided, what about perishing and becoming? And which part chase into being? According to Kierkegaard, our life reflects our predominant thought. Nowadays popular as a manifestation theory, I guess. But are thoughts really the first principle and the cause? And now I'm reminded of Plato and Aristotle and their fascinating but different perspectives. And in his theory of form, for example, Plato discussed reality as shadows, different forms as a manifestation of one single, unique, universal, unchangeable, and therefore true and eternal idea that exists in non-material world of the ideas and is a part of our subconscious mind. Jung will later talk about it and call it common consciousness. So, according to Plato, the world is completely done. Nothing more there is to be created, which doesn't exist in the world of forms already, but only manifested as a shadows in this diverse form. I will try to illustrate what Plato actually meant by that. There is a form of an elephant with a trunk in a divine world of the eternal forms, and all the other elephants are shadow of that one singular form. It begs the question, if we cut trunks to all living elephants on Earth, will the eternal idea of an elephant remain with the trunk? Plato says yes. Darwin would disagree with his changeable species according to environmental adaptation. So human, according to Plato, as half god, half animal, has all the forms in his subconscious and becomes aware of those forms, and unlike animals, possess self-awareness and the ability to access that world of ideas. But humans are not able to create elephant, which leads me to Aristotle and his discussion that is more concentrated on artist and human creation rather than God's creation. Aristotle took a completely reverse path when it comes to forms. He claims that a child sees an elephant prior that it creates an idea of an elephant with a trunk in his head. So according to him, all things exist in a world of ideas, but in their abstract form. An elephant on earth is a shadow of an abstract idea of an elephant, not necessarily with a trunk. And the art made by human artists is a shadow of that idea. An elephant itself, according to Aristotle, is not a piece of art, but if a human artist draw, paint, make a sculpture of an elephant, or put an elephant in a different context, that is art. And I will make another video about this. I will get more into details because some questions arise. For example, what about the music? Because music communicates directly from the abstract. Balzac's Serafita is a very interesting very slim book that I've read long time ago, but then again recently while I was writing this text for you in order to make this video. And it is about androgen being that adopted a philosophy of Emanuel Swedenborg. And I linked it somehow with this subject because it talks about the first principle. So number as a first principle and infinite numbers as a fact and form of abstract is unreachable, according to him, for a human brain to completely adopt in conscious. Science, although work in progress, is limited. What I cannot see, prove, it doesn't exist. Because senses are limited. We couldn't see viruses before a microscope has been invented. We could sense the consequences, but not the cause. In math, there is a great order which can be proven, of course, though humans juggle with terms such as coordinate system in which x, and y are infinite numbers. Why didn't humans give themselves a complete insight into eternal? And how did humans anticipate eternity if such is impossible to understand other than fragmentary? Well, is it plausible that man gave himself something that is for him only partly understandable and not knowable? The question of movement, very interesting. Where does the movement begin? If it is determined by a number, what determines a number? A word? If a word exists in infinite as an abstract form, I'm going back to Aristotle, do elements exist as a potency prior to causing? But not every potency necessarily needs to be manifest. And if elements are divided, an eternal number is a unit. They cannot exist as such out of the sensible world. But then how can they exist as a matter? And where is their prior principle if not in the eternal that is undivided and unchangeable? Let's say there is no form, rather just an abstract idea. But then where does the idea of form come from? If we posit the eternal as an energy field, love that vibrates the highest frequency, the decay of a matter still remains unexplainable. And what is prior to the individual? No science and knowledge are possible without universal principles that are indisputable. Language is based on the idea of common principles. Otherwise, conversation and writing and reading would be impossible. If I mention to you now an elephant, each one of you has a different idea, and neither one of you stop and imagine every single detail. It would take a lifetime to finish a book. But the form remains common as a universal principle. Readers and writers juggle with words, same as mathematicians with numbers, lines, and dots, same as mystics with angels, for the cause of each is unmeasurable and part of an abstract infinite. In which capacity the potency of a being or a thing and reality are aligned? If in full capacity, then the ideas should contain traits such as smell and texture, right? Let me explain. The potency of being, becoming, and capability of being, what being can do, are different things. Becoming is infinite in terms of manifestations, and capability deals with traits, with capacity. So if a movement is a first principle, then the substance cannot be separate of that capacity, and there is no being deprived from that capacity. But we all know that we all don't have the same capacities and talents. If forms of art are deprived from the movement as a first principle and separable, they have to exist in some other form that occurs to human beings and artists other than the first principle, one that is unknowable. If so, then we are back to the main question and the title of this video. Where do the ideas come from? And I'll try to answer that question more completely in my next video next week, in which I will also discuss nudity in art, so stay tuned and subscribe.